But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last.
What, pray tell? Do you get when the outspoken provocateur Charlie Kirk decides to slap the daytime talk show behemoth The View with a staggering $100 million lawsuit? And one of its most prominent hosts, Sunny Hostin, reportedly responds by emotionally short-circuiting live on national television? The answer, dear viewers, is a legal circus of epic proportions. A daytime drama so infused with real-world consequences, it makes scripted television pale in comparison. And, unintentionally, one of the most compelling dark comedy specials of the year. Brace yourselves, because as Sunny allegedly spirals into a vortex of on-air panic, Whoopi glares with her signature stoicism. And Charlie Kirk attempts to convince America that he and thousands of students are the real aggrieved victims of reckless words. This meltdown promises tears, lawsuits, and enough unfiltered, unscripted chaos to make even the unflappable Judge Judy consider early retirement. You simply won't believe who cracks first. And spoiler alert, it's probably not the lawyers.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there, of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country, that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo...
The View, that televised tempest in a teacup that often masquerades as thoughtful, nuanced discussion, found itself squarely in the crosshairs. This is a show, let's be brutally honest, that frequently feels less like an intellectual panel and more like a poorly choreographed, overly caffeinated shouting match, where reasoned argument and subtle nuance are routinely, almost gleefully, drowned in a veritable tsunami of over-the-top emotion. Every topic, no matter how trivial, is seemingly treated like a five-alarm fire, demanding immediate, passionate, and often ill-informed pronouncements. The controversy ignited when hosts on The View, in a segment discussing a Turning Point USA Youth Summit, made inflammatory remarks suggesting that the conservative organization had somehow embraced neo-Nazis, who, it's crucial to note, were protesting outside the event, not within it.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here.
This accusation, naturally, did not sit well with Charlie Kirk, the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. He didn't just fire off a series of angry tweets or issue a strongly worded press release. No, Kirk, a man known for his confrontational style, immediately threatened a lawsuit, a massive one at that, demanding a public apology for what he characterized as the egregious smearing of 5,000 high school and college kids who had attended the summit. He argued passionately that these young people, who had traveled from across the country to hear conservative speakers, now had to live with an undeserved shadow cast over them due to the reckless pronouncements made on a national television platform. "We're not going to let this go," Kirk declared, "because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it."
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women, they are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid.
Adding a significant layer of fuel to this already raging fire was Sunny Hostin's now infamous and widely criticized comment about uneducated white women supposedly being a key demographic voting for Donald Trump. This remark, delivered with her characteristic air of unwavering conviction, became an immediate lightning rod for criticism, perfectly encapsulating for her detractors the disgusting, gross elitism and out-of-touch nature they had long accused her, and the show, of embodying. The swift and fierce counter-argument was both simple and deeply resonant. Possessing a college degree does not automatically equate to wisdom or intelligence, and conversely, a lack of one certainly doesn't signify stupidity or a deficiency in critical thinking. The implication was clear. Hostin's comment was seen not just as inaccurate, but as deeply condescending and offensive to a large segment of the American populace.
Turning Point Conference were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs, and
I think it's important that every single person that attended that Turning Point, every Republican speak up against the because against the flags that were waved.
You let them in. President, open your
You let them.
Then came the formal announcement of the $100 million bombshell. A figure so eye-poppingly massive, it sounded less like a legitimate legal claim for damages, and more like Charlie Kirk's ambitious blueprint for purchasing a private island, perhaps complete with a personal theme park and a fleet of luxury jets poised to whisk him away from the swirling storm of media drama he himself had so intentionally and effectively conjured. This wasn't merely about seeking financial compensation. It was a cultural gauntlet thrown down with theatrical flair. Kirk's lawsuit, in this context, transformed from a mere legal filing into a declaration of war against the weaponization of ignorance. A direct, unambiguous challenge to the pervasive culture of performative outrage that, his supporters argue, has become the very bread and butter, the raison d'etre, of The View. This was about demanding accountability, not just securing a hefty payout. Let's be brutally honest. For a significant portion of its viewership and its many critics, The View often feels less like a legitimate news analysis program and more like a midday melodrama, a daily spectacle dressed in an array of clashing patterns and even louder, more discordant opinions. Sunny Hostin, the show's resident legal voice, a former prosecutor, often wields her law degree more like a convenient prop, a social media badge of authority, than a substantive tool for incisive legal analysis. Now, in a delicious twist of irony, she finds herself entangled, perhaps uncomfortably so, at the very center of a real legal firestorm. A dispute that demands far more than just her usual brand of coffee-fueled commentary and confident pronouncements. This isn't about quipping with co-hosts. This is about facing potential legal consequences for alleged reputation-shredding monologues.
Now we begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend. And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo-Nazis who showed up outside the event.
For over a decade, The View, according to its detractors, has operated with a kind of unchecked rhetorical abandon, a privileged hall pass for inflammatory statements and often character assassination. They've become masters of yelling over nuance, steamrolling dissent with practiced ease, and serving up a daily dose of smugness, all garnished with a flourish of faux empowerment and moral superiority. But somewhere between the carefully orchestrated applause breaks and the seamlessly integrated commercial bumpers, they seemingly forgot a fundamental truth. Broadcasting opinions, especially potentially damaging ones, to millions of viewers comes with inherent responsibilities, and occasionally with legally binding subpoenas. Charlie Kirk, it appears, decided it was high time to remind them of this oft-ignored reality. He is, in effect, pulling back the curtain on what happens when unchecked chatter finally meets its moment of reckoning. His lawsuit, whether one agrees with its merits or not, forces the self-proclaimed queens of clamor to defend their often incendiary nonsense outside the carefully controlled, fiercely protected bubble of studio applause and pre-written cue cards. This, his supporters argue, isn't cancel culture. It's accountability culture, a long overdue demand for substance over sound bites. The loud, it seems, are finally being told in no uncertain terms to hush, or at least to choose their words more carefully.
Let me kind of humble the audience a little bit. Donald Trump won by less than a point in Wisconsin, about 28,000 votes. He won by a point-ish, 1.2 in Michigan. And then he won by 1 point in Pennsylvania. And so, Megyn, it is conceivable that without this record movement of youth vote,
Cue the presumed and likely very real panic at ABC headquarters. Legal teams, one can only imagine, are now meticulously and perhaps nervously dissecting years of on-air commentary, searching for other potential landmines, other instances of flippant slander that could explode into costly litigation. The hosts, so accustomed to the comfortable confines of their velvet thrones, so used to delivering pronouncements with an air of unshakable authority, are now discovering, perhaps to their dismay, that the courtroom doesn't have a studio audience poised to clap enthusiastically when they dunk on someone. And Sunny Hostin, the supposed legal guru, the voice of legal reason on the panel, now finds herself in the uncomfortable and undeniably ironic position of being at the very center of a real high-stakes legal spectacle, a drama where Twitter followers and righteous-sounding monologues hold absolutely no sway. Here, in the cold, hard light of the law, actual facts, verifiable evidence, and the tangible impact of one's words take center stage. This legal brawl, it must be emphasized, is more than just a personal spat between Charlie Kirk and the hosts of The View. It's a broader indictment of a media culture that often prioritizes sensationalism, outrage, and ideological warfare over accuracy, fairness, and responsible discourse. Charlie Kirk isn't just suing a talk show. He's challenging the very notion of televised immunity, the unspoken idea that certain media personalities, by virtue of their platform and their perceived influence, are somehow exempt from the consequences of their words. Will this $100 million lawsuit be the mute button on reckless, defamatory commentary that many frustrated viewers have been desperately waiting for? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. The View is being called to answer, to account for its words and actions, and the entire media world is watching with rapt attention to see if they'll finally be held to a standard higher than who can roll their eyes the hardest or shout the loudest. The delicious irony of the situation is almost too perfect to script. The View, a show that proudly, almost defiantly, wraps itself in the noble banner of free speech, now finds itself in the awkward position of having to explain exactly how free that speech was when it allegedly smeared a public figure, and by extension, thousands of young attendees, for what many perceive to be sport, for the sake of creating a viral moment, a headline-grabbing controversy. Sunny Hostin, who so often lectures others on the finer points of law and ethics, might want to crack open a law textbook herself, because this lawsuit isn't just some frivolous vanity project. It's a serious and potentially very costly reckoning.
It's amazing. She's specifically there referring to the women, but of course it's the non-college educated men as well who voted for Donald Trump. And the nerve of this woman to whom the country has given so much to try to dump on people who didn't go to college. Look at you, look at your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now, Sunny?
For years, The View has dedicated itself with almost religious fervor to crafting a daily theatrical spectacle of moral superiority, feigning profound indignation over trivialities as inconsequential as latte orders or the relative boldness of a particular politician's knitwear. Their outrage machine, it seems, never sleeps, perpetually powered by a potent cocktail of curated panel indignation, expertly coordinated head nodding, and the kind of self-congratulatory, almost Pavlovian applause that could, one imagines, reliably power a small, isolated village. But now, suddenly, they're staring down the barrel of a courtroom instead of a camera, blinking like bewildered deer caught in the harsh, unforgiving legal headlights. Suddenly, the shrieking, often incoherent punditry transforms into a desperate, almost comical symphony of denial, as if they've all collectively, conveniently forgotten the years, the countless hours, of verbal shrapnel they've so gleefully, so recklessly, launched in every conceivable direction. These women, these self-appointed arbiters of truth and decency, have, in the eyes of their critics, systematically weaponized daytime television, casually delivering character assassinations with the same breezy nonchalance they might employ when discussing skincare commercials. They've dished it out like watery cafeteria slop, unfiltered, unappetizing, and often overflowing with unsubstantiated claims. But now, Charlie Kirk has boldly entered stage left, not with a witty counter takedown or a sarcastic tweet, but with a formidable stack of subpoenas and meticulously prepared court filings. The man didn't just bring an argument, he brought a heavily armed contingent of reinforcements. And let's be crystal clear, this escalating legal brawl isn't just some personal crusade orchestrated by Charlie Kirk. It's a profound and arguably long overdue critique, an indictment of a showbiz juggernaut that has, for far too long, pretended to be serious journalism while functioning more like a glittery, over-caffeinated, and often deeply dysfunctional group think tank. This lawsuit doesn't just ruffle a few feathers, it yanks the entire peacock bald, exposing the often unattractive reality beneath the dazzling plumage. It's a direct confrontation, not necessarily with the individual hosts themselves, but with the smug, self-perpetuating infrastructure that believes dissent must be aggressively shouted down, ridiculed, and dismissed, rather than respectfully debated or thoughtfully engaged with.
Do you think if a liberal came to speak at University of Kentucky, they'd give an open mic like I just did to a conservative and had a discussion like this?
I certainly hope they would.
No, they wouldn't. Because speech is not a left-wing value. That is why they have to deploy shock troops called Antifa to go after everywhere I go. When I go to University of California, Davis next week, there has to be 120 police officers because of the threats, the violent threats of liberals that want me dead, that want to disrupt our events. There are no right-wing hecklers that come to events like this.
I don't want to say too much, Kirk has stated, hinting at the legal strategy to come. But we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun. This veiled threat, this promise of further action, only adds to the intrigue, to the sense that this is far more than just a public spat. It's a calculated challenge to a media format that often hides behind the shield of hot topics and pre-recorded laugh tracks, while systematically bullying anyone who dares to color outside their rigidly defined ideological lines. What we're witnessing unfold isn't just another fleeting courtroom drama. It's a genuine reckoning. Because eventually, inevitably, even the loudest, most impenetrable echo chamber runs headfirst into someone who is completely, blessedly immune to the noise. Someone who shows up not to argue, not to engage in a shouting match, but to methodically, systematically dismantle the entire rotten edifice. And that eye-watering $100 million figure? That's not just a random number plucked from thin air. It's a deafening siren, blaring a stark warning in the ears of media bullies everywhere, on every platform. The message is simple, unambiguous, and deeply unsettling for those who have long enjoyed the privilege of consequence-free commentary. You want to treat public figures like disposable piñatas on national television? Fine, but be warned, be very warned that one of them, one day, might just swing back. Not with witty comebacks or sarcastic retorts, but with a formidable arsenal of litigation papers, backed by a team of very serious, very expensive lawyers. Meanwhile, The View's ratings might paradoxically experience a temporary spike. Controversy, as any seasoned media observer knows, always sells, but so increasingly does accountability. Charlie Kirk's lawsuit, regardless of its ultimate outcome, adds a much-needed layer of gravity to the often frivolous world of daytime television. It finally, forcefully, compels these hosts, these purveyors of daily outrage, to realize, perhaps for the first time, that their soundbites, their hot takes, their often careless pronouncements have real-world consequences. Consequences they can no longer simply snark their way out of.
I don't want to say too much, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Can I tell you something? Like, I've had quite a few people contact me about that particular post. Like, I'm sure I have 1/100th of what you're getting, but people are contacting me about cabinet posts. I'm like, I got
look,
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I'm actually, after this conversation, heading to Mar-a-Lago for a week, and we have a lot to sift through, and if I could be helpful, I have asked. I want to be actively involved in all things education, as you can imagine.
And Sunny Hostin. Oh, Sunny. The supposed legal guru, the voice of reason and prosecutorial experience on the panel, now finds herself with a delicious irony that is surely not lost on her critics, at the very epicenter of a rather messy and potentially very damaging legal spectacle. No, Sunny, this isn't a mock trial on a television set where you get to casually toss around complex legal terms like intent and malice while comfortably sipping chamomile tea from an oversized novelty mug. This is real. The courtroom, that stark, unforgiving arena of facts and evidence, doesn't care how many Twitter followers you have, how many Emmy Awards adorn your mantelpiece, or how righteous and impassioned your on-air monologues may sound. In the courtroom, facts matter. Truth matters. And so, crucially, does the tangible damage caused by reckless, unsubstantiated, and potentially defamatory rhetoric. Let's just pause here for a moment, amidst the swirling chaos and the flying accusations, to truly appreciate the delicious, almost Shakespearean irony of what's currently happening. Charlie Kirk, a man frequently mocked by his detractors for being loud, for being provocative, for being, in their eyes, a purveyor of conservative outrage, is now suing a television show that has, for years, built its entire empire, its very brand, on being even louder, even more provocative, and arguably far more consistently outrageous. And instead of attempting to duck the inevitable punches, instead of retreating into a defensive crouch, he's boldly, audaciously, aiming a proverbial haymaker straight at the smug, often condescending faces of daytime television hypocrisy. Because let's be brutally, refreshingly honest, The View stopped being genuinely insightful, if it ever truly was, a very, very long time ago. It has, for many, devolved into little more than a daily, predictable tantrum, albeit one delivered in expensive designer outfits and filmed on a brightly lit, network-funded set. It's not just that the hosts are consistently, unapologetically biased. It's that they are often belligerently, almost proudly so. Every dissenting opinion, every perspective that dares to challenge their progressive orthodoxy is met with a predictable barrage of collective scoffs, passive-aggressive clapping, and, of course, Sunny Hostin's signature, often patronizing legal lecture light. But this time, they're not dealing with a fleeting bad take on Twitter, a momentary blip of online criticism. They're dealing with a $100 million wake-up call, a legal challenge that threatens not just their finances, but their very credibility.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there, of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo.
Of course, Charlie Kirk's many detractors and The View's loyal defenders will inevitably, and perhaps understandably, dismiss this lawsuit as performative, as a cynical PR stunt designed to generate headlines and rally his conservative base. But even if this is, in part, a performance, then give the man an Oscar because he's accomplishing something The View, with all its resources and its national platform, never could. He's making noise that genuinely matters, noise that resonates beyond the usual partisan echo chambers, noise that forces a difficult and long overdue conversation about media responsibility and the consequences of unchecked rhetoric. His lawsuit is a line drawn firmly in the sand, a defiant scream of "enough," directed squarely at the mock trials, the kangaroo courts, disguised as harmless morning entertainment. Supporters of the show, those who faithfully tune in for their daily dose of progressive affirmation, will undoubtedly whine that it's satire, that it's merely opinion, that it's all protected under the broad, sacred umbrella of free speech. But when you systematically, repeatedly mischaracterize someone, when you mock their deeply held beliefs, when you pass summary judgment before the first commercial break has even aired, you can no longer credibly claim to be neutral, to be objective, to be simply commentating. You are, whether you choose to admit it or not, actively and often aggressively assassinating character. This lawsuit, in all likelihood, won't destroy The View. The show is too entrenched, too much a part of the daytime television firmament to simply disappear overnight. But it might, just might, force it to finally, however reluctantly, look in the mirror. Maybe, just maybe, it'll make them think twice. Pause for a moment of genuine reflection before casually turning people, entire groups of people, into disposable punchlines for the amusement of their studio audience. Maybe, just maybe, it'll serve as a stark, uncomfortable reminder that their words, broadcast to millions, carry significant weight, and sometimes very real, very expensive legal consequences. And the audience, the viewers who faithfully, or perhaps hate-watchingly, tune in each day, they undoubtedly deserve better. They deserve more than just 5 people yelling over each other and audaciously calling it journalism. They deserve clarity. They deserve fairness, and perhaps, just perhaps, they even deserve a small, refreshing dash of humility from the people who presume to inform and enlighten them. The View, for far too long, has offered precious little of that. And now, thanks to Charlie Kirk and his audacious $100 million lawsuit, they might finally, however grudgingly, be held to a standard higher than simply who can roll their eyes the hardest or feign the most convincing outrage. In the end, this isn't just a lawsuit. It's a statement. It's a bold, uncompromising challenge to a media landscape where mockery too often masquerades as insightful analysis, and where the loudest, most strident voices invariably, and tragically, drown out the nuanced truth. It's high time, many would argue, to reset the volume, and this unfolding courtroom drama might just be the unexpected and surprisingly effective mute button we didn't even know we so desperately needed. So, yes, laugh at the sheer, unadulterated spectacle of it all if you want. But understand that beneath the sensational headlines and the inevitable hashtags lies a very real, very important question about responsibility, accountability, and the future of public discourse. And The View, whether they like it or not, is currently being called to answer for the many years it spent, by all appearances, asking all the wrong ones.